tech checks. We are going to record the session that will be made available afterwards. My name is Nikki Leach. I have the pleasure of being your facilitator today. I always find that quite a difficult word to say. And I am also involved with the 31 Lens. I'm a CEO at the Central Rangers Len, and I spend a lot of my time working with Lens at Hugh Whittlesey Len. And we're very excited to have a number of our Len colleagues on board today. Em, do you want to go to the next slide? Again, we're just having a little bit of a little delay in what's happening. But as I said, it's my pleasure to welcome you all today, and I'd like to acknowledge that we're all joining this meeting today from different lands and different parts of country, and we want to pay our respects to elders past and present, and also welcome any other community leaders who might be joining us for this webinar today, acknowledging that sovereignty was never ceded, and there's a lot of conversation going on at the moment with The Voice. And however you feel about that, we hope you will take into account both sides of that argument, because our Indigenous peoples need to be recognised and heard. Okay, quick reminder about housekeeping. Many of you have had the experience of that as we've got sorted out. We're seeing our panelists pop up on the screen, but essentially it's a webinar. You'll be muted. We encourage you, please, to use the chat, use that to introduce yourself, drop in any comments, ask questions in the chat. They will all be collated and put together with the recording and all the resources from what is presented today, made available to all participants after the event. You'll see on my background, I've got a QR code that's fairly present. You can scan that QR code as you need to, which will take you to the slide decks and the presentations afterwards. And like all things, we'll ask you for a quick evaluation just to see how we did. Thanks for joining us for the next hour. Em, can you, I've just got on my screen the slides are a bit slow. Keep moving forward. We've done our acknowledgement now. And purpose of today's webinar. So again, thanks for sharing that hour with you. Vic Lens have been around for 22 years. There are 31 of us across Victoria. We're place-based experts. We work with school and industry, and we often, outside of our school to work contract, work in this early intervention space. Many of us are very passionate about that importance of getting transition from primary to secondary school right. And we're really keen on ensuring that students, from their formative years, so in primary school, don't internalize those social norms, those prejudices. And we really want you to be thinking about you can't be what you can't see today. We also want to, talk about gender, that socioeconomic status impacting, and of course, the important role that parents play in advice and support to their children, and the importance of critical transition points, especially from primary to secondary school. We're going to explore a series of questions today. They're on your screen. We'd love you to keep that sort of front of mind or in your mind when you're thinking about the questions you'd like to ask of your panelists. And essentially, they're things that we hope are asked and answered today by our experts. We are very pleased to have so much shared expertise, not just in the webinar, but on our panel. And you will hear from a number of my Len colleagues. So we've got Dave Burton from Goldfields Len, Jane Hosking from North Central Len, Sandra Dickens from the Department of Education. And we did have Kim Stadmiller, who is unfortunately unwell, but ably replaced by Sophie Cross, who I had the pleasure of working with when I was at Hugh Whittlesey Len, and we'll hear about their programs and their expertise. Now, I don't want to take time. We are on a pretty tight timeline, and our speakers are being asked to keep to a total of 7 minutes. I will be signalling manly and winding you up if you go over that time, but there is a little bit of leeway. And of course, we also want to ensure there is time for questions and answers. So without any further ado, I am going to throw over to our first speakers, who are Dave Burton and Jane Hoskins. Over to you guys.
Thank you, Nikki, and thank you for your interest, everyone who's joined us today. Dave and I was going to say we're a dynamic duo, Dave. I'm not sure how dynamic, but we're a duo today, aren't we? So I'm going to begin, and then we're going to go a little bit of back and forward. So bear with us. We hope that this we just really wanted to show how the work we're doing across North Central and Loddon Campaspe in Victoria is all connected up, and we can see it as something that will provide best outcomes for our children and young people. So just a quick introduction for those of you who don't know me. Thanks, Em. I'm Jane Hosking. I'm the CEO of the North Central LEN. My background is in health and early years. You'll find that LEN EOs and staff have a plethora of backgrounds, and I think it really adds to the quality of the, how we can connect up and work together and use our combined strengths. So I will unapologetically today be flying a rural flag as well. And this particular topic is really close to my heart because the earliest possible intervention for best outcomes for all of our children and young people is my favourite topic in the whole wide world. In fact, if it was up to me, we'd start even earlier. So I just did want to show the next slide, Em, if that's okay, please. Which is the North Central LEN. We have a cradle to career approach. So we work alongside cross-sectoral partners to create an ecosystem of place-based approaches to support children and young people from cradle, so through the solid foundation, through the middle years, which we're going to talk about today, resilient middle years, right through to the strong careers and pathways, and the youth voice, confident youth voice that overlays everything. We really have a focus on smooth transition points and supporting young people through those transition points. And our aim is to create opportunities for all children and young people to thrive in education, work and life. We can go to the next slide, please, Em. So our journey, just to provide a little bit of context, is all about trusted long-term partnerships. And I hope that comes through today, both in our North Central region, but also across Loddon Campaspe and with all the relationships we have with our surrounding LENs and Vic LENs across the state. Especially in rural areas, partnerships are key. There isn't a plethora of services and supports, and there is significant entrenched disadvantage as well that we'll be talking about today. The North Central LEN, we have a long-standing career education partnership working with DET and primarily P12 schools across our area. And we've always had a strong emphasis on aspiration, supporting engagement and attainment of Year 12 or equivalent, and I guess combating any disengagement as well. But in 2017, we began our journey with support from our SEAL, our Senior Education Improvement Leader, and also our Regional Director in Loddon Campaspe to look at things earlier, because our couple of our champion principals and some other local government champions were saying we're just not starting early enough. Our children are arriving at school not ready to learn. So that's when we started our Strong Family, Strong Children work that actually starts at birth and goes to 8 years. Then again, our community and our partners came back to us and said a couple of years later, we actually need to continue this. We can't entrench disadvantage, is a long-term patient work. We actually need to also continue this partnership 9 to 18 years. So that's our Strong Youth, Strong Communities initiative. So I've popped up this rural picture again that shows all of our sectors working together. We can't afford to work in silos. And the job, I guess, of the LEN in this space has been the elevator, which is across the top, connecting up all of the other voices at the table, and being, I guess, providing that facilitator, which we know there's a huge amount of goodwill, but we also need facilitated support to actually make these things happen. Data is also the other thing that holds us all together, and we have a very strong focus on evidence base, because particularly in rural areas where there's we don't have a lot of money, so we actually need to make every dollar count. So I just want to really continue now into talking about our relationship across Loddon Campaspe with our LENs. And we've really come together to look at how we could best provide curated high quality careers from early on, which is what we're going to talk about today, from that grade 5, 6 level all the way through to when our young people leave school, hopefully ready to get their best job or go on their best career journey. So I'm going to talk a little bit first about what I've actually been asked to speak about today, and then I'm going to handball over to Dave to continue on with another example. So we're going to set the scene a little bit later. We hope this makes sense as we go along. So the first initiative that I'm going to be talking about, if we can go to the next slide, please, Anne, is Dream Seeds, which is an initiative of Youth Thrive Victoria, a fantastic purpose-driven for-purpose organisation that we partner with. So we also wanted to demonstrate that this Careers Exploring we're talking about today is made up of a curated list of career opportunities, I guess, for young people, but it doesn't have to be, they don't have to be new, or we don't have to be recreating the wheels with these. We're using some that are actually evidence-based and already out there. We're just curating them so that we can, people can be assured, young people and schools and career practitioners can be assured that they're actually quality evidence-based programs. So this program, as I said, is from Youth Thrive Victoria. What we love about this particular program, and we've been working with Youth Thrive for about 3 years now, facilitating this program across our region, is that it's actually co-designed by young people who have grown up in rural Victoria. And we're really lucky to have in our midst today Ella Jacobson, who's one of the facilitators, the young facilitators of this program, who's been able to join us at the last minute. So I encourage you to ask any questions in the chat, because there is a Q&A section for Ella to answer as well. So Ella and a large group of young alumni of Youth Thrive Victoria actually designed a program, a 90-minute workshop with support from a lecturer as well, for Year 6 students in rural primary schools across Victoria. And in our case, we actually deliver it to Year 5 students as well in its smaller schools. And it's really very much focused on building those really key building blocks of careers education around aspiration, resilience, and connection. So it's an example, and you'll see in a minute when you see our frameworks, it's an example of our early self-exploration. It's really, really very keen that it's very sorry, I'm seeing chat come across, which I want to answer. Sorry, Nikki. It's a very key part of the work that we do, in that it's about those careers education skills that young people need to develop. So the focus is on preparing these young people or participating in this workshop with the support of their teachers. There's also curriculum, it's all curriculum aligned, and there's also a portal that the schools have access to afterwards. And it's to enable all young people, or to aim to enable all young people to be leaders of their own lives in spite of their circumstances. Nikki said earlier, you can't be what you can't see. And this is actually about trying to imagine what you want to be. And there's a whole heap of fun activities that, as I said, are led by young people who grew up in rural Victoria and who are now off studying, some off working, but mostly off studying now. And they actually facilitate these conversations and engage with young people. And the feedback from young people is they feel so valued in these workshops, which is fantastic. So just a little bit of an update too. We've actually been able to, through the unfortunate recent floods that occurred across Victoria following COVID, so it's been a very rough period for our children and young people. We received some flood recovery funding, which meant that we could actually roll out some Dream Seeds programs, and Youth Thrive Victoria could actually add a unit around, I guess, resilience around responding to disasters, particularly floods, and offer that safe space to actually explore what hope looks like in those circumstances. So that was a really successful exercise, and we've been able to evaluate that as well, and that'll lead to some more work in this space.
That's great,
So,
Jane. I'm just going to say you're approaching the end of your part.
Thank you. I'm going to hand across to Dave. Nikki, I'm going to hand across to Dave, who's going to now talk to us about Passions and Pathways, another fantastic early careers education project.
Thanks, Jane. And I'm sure the audience will have lots of questions for you shortly.
All good.
So hi, everyone. I'm Dave Burton. I'm the EO of Goldfields Land, and we have the Passions and Pathways program at the, I guess, the core of our impact and interventions in our region across the city of Greater Bendigo, Mount Alexander, which is around Castlemaine, and Central Goldfields around Maryborough. This program has been running it's in its 13th year. It actually started with a collective of businesses, local council and principals sitting down, looking at the challenge of students in our region, which is reflected across the state, of around how they see themselves in the future. And so in particular, around what they aspire to be. And one of the quotes that we I guess hold very tightly to our hearts when we're thinking about this program is one of the kids in the schools we work in said to their teacher during a presentation of a business in their classroom, that those with jobs, those people with jobs are lucky. And the level of welfare reliance in a lot of the schools that we work in really probably further profiles that challenge that we face. So this program is all about increasing access to careers learning for primary school students in regional and rural Victoria. We do have a model that is also relevant for Metro Victoria as well, so it's not exclusive to regional and rural. So the program follows a learning journey which has been developed with local schools, with curriculum experts, and federal and state government. It's aligned to the federal and state careers curriculum. As many of you would be aware, and this is part of the challenge that we are facing in our schooling system, is that careers learning currently within the curriculum is not seen as core and crucial, reflected in the curriculum in primary school. It's not in the curriculum. And so that's a challenge that I put forward to government on a regular basis and advocate for, is the importance of us really seeing a curriculum for careers in primary school. So this program has its own curriculum that it runs for grade 5 and grade 6 kids. It's in, at the moment, it's in 11 schools in our region, and has an evidence base, quite a substantial evidence base from its over 12 years of operation. The program has two key components. One of them is about developing capacity of school and the teachers and educators, and also about obviously developing the aspirations and lifting that lid of possibilities for young people who are the students in the school. So there's two parallel things happening in learning journeys in this program. It runs for a whole term, for term 3. And there's a lot of preparation work that is done with the teachers and the businesses that are involved in the program in term 1 and term 2 each year. And that includes a whole of school professional development session, and that's where it starts. So we bring together all of the teachers from the primary school, but obviously especially those that will be in the classroom that are running the program. And they will explore the benefits and practices of careers learning through professional development. They will put a very fine eye, if that makes sense, on gender bias in the classroom, but also more broadly in the school. And have a very close look through a number of activities that we do with them on what is the gender bias paraphernalia around the classroom, in the library, in the communications that go out to the kids and to the parents, etc. So to really do some critical self-analysis. They then the teachers move through a process over a 10-week period of exploring real-world experiences with the kids, with the students, through curriculum-aligned activities, excursions and incursions. They build connections with businesses across the region, as that is the crucial part to the success of this program. So in our region at the moment, there's about 70 businesses that are connected with schools. So it's a very deep and wide connection. Then as they go along through the program, they identify how students' interests translate into future opportunities. So they're getting to know their students on a deeper level and starting to look at how they can support Year 7 transitions and increased aspiration. So then at the end of that process, the teachers are aware, deeply engaged in, obviously, teachers are deeply engaged in students' learning journeys, but also about what their aspirations are as they move into Year 7 in this crucial stage. Students go through a learning journey over the 10 weeks, which sees them start with developing an avatar of themselves, inward reflection, looking at what their strengths and interests are. And then they move to explore the possibilities. They visit educational institutions on immersion days. So they'll visit university, they'll visit TAFE. They will meet young industry ambassadors who are trained, people under 30 who are seen as, I guess, peers to students, less so than somebody my age, who can connect and talk about their pathway journey and the challenges that they faced. They then move into collaborating on an entrepreneurial project with a business. They work looking at that reflection they did as an avatar activity earlier in the term in the curriculum, and they work with local businesses using their skills and interests and create. It can be very varied. It can be working with a data science firm and looking at how they can actually work together to develop data modeling for the agricultural landscape in their region. Or they might work with a local builder where they create a library house that goes on a fence, and they take different roles in creating that. Nikki, you're about to give me the wind up, aren't you?
I am. I was trying to be very discreet, but when I come off mute, you're getting close to your time.
Yeah, I'm getting.
And look, it's we're all very passionate about it, and I can see Soph smiling because it's almost a mirror of what we're going to hear from Sophie. But I think what's so important is that aspiration stuff. And so if you're happy to just wind up, Dave, we'll just
20 seconds. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely, of course.
So the key to this learning journey is then bringing the young people and the teachers and the businesses together with community, and in particular parents and guardians. So we do that throughout the journey. We've been communicating with parents and guardians in the community, but then we bring them together for an expo, and the students share their learning. They share their journey with family, friends, and people, and who are in the community. And then we celebrate and advocate then for their future journey into Year 7. And there is a lot of evidence in the research, in the evaluation that we've done on that students in that grade 5, grade 6 continue that thinking and that mind shift all the way up post Year 12, and a lot of them still have their curriculum resources and outputs that they developed all the way back with them when they're finishing Year 12. And I think that definitely says something about the power of engaging young people, but also relying on their interests and skills, not just going, we need to understand your journey, but critically reflecting together.
Thank you, Dave. And look, very powerful. We all live and breathe it, really. And how wonderful to have your primary school avatar with you in your Year 12 portfolio. I just think it's so powerful. But it's a lovely segue into our next presenter, who is Sandra Dickens. And Sandra is actually going to talk to us a bit about that importance of transition from primary to secondary and the work she's doing. So over to you, Sandra.
Thanks very much, Nikki. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I have to say, what a delightful presentation from Jane and Dave. And as someone who went to school in Central Victoria in a 2-room primary school and then high school in Bendigo, I wish those programs existed when I was going there. So thanks very much. Look, before you can see you can read a little bit about me there, but I just have a message to give you before I launch into what I'm going to present today. So my colleague Leela Darville, the manager of the career education team here at the department, sends her apologies. I was talking to her today, this morning, and she's recovering from a very significant operation, but she did want to pass on some information about sorry, I'm losing my frame. Pass on some information about a program that they ran last year, which was the importance of starting career development early in primary schools. It was run by a specialist in the field, Professor Mary McMahon, and Leela's team are looking at running a repeat version of that again later this year. So keep your eyes peeled for that. I'm going to talk to you today about the work I'm doing in the department, leading the primary to secondary school transition reform project here. I just, when I first came into the department, after being in a school for 14 years, I was at Fitzroy High School for 14 years, where I led a holistic transition and career development program. I'm a qualified careers practitioner. I worked as an acting assistant principal, and I've got some other industry experience as well. But when I came into the department, the first thing I did was to support the Parliamentary Secretary for Schools, who at the time was Tim Richardson, to do a review of primary to secondary school transitions, to report on the department's progress on the 2015 VARGO Education Transitions Report, and to make recommendations to improve primary to secondary school transition across the school system. I'll talk to you a little bit about the findings of the review, but mainly focusing on the impact to students across the transitions period, where there are quite a few findings. Look, and none of this will be surprising to any of you, particularly because of the work that you do in the space. We know that across the transition period, there's a drop in student outcomes. And when we're talking about student outcomes, we're talking about it in their achievement, their engagement, their wellbeing. And it's been a consistent trend for Victorian students across many years. Linked to the drop in outcomes can be a student's feeling of a lack of value, their school connectedness and belonging, and it can lead to an increased likelihood of them not completing secondary school. We know that there's a significant minority of students who experience a poor transition, and I'm going to go into a little bit of detail about what might lead to the poor transitions, but also on top of that, depending on a student's socio-economic status, whether or not they have a disability, and family factors may also increase the likelihood of a student falling into that significant or substantial minority as well. And we also know that a poor transition can have long-lasting impacts, with some research showing that a poor transition can negatively impact employment and learning and earning capacity 50 years after leaving school. So it's really significant. Our response to the findings of the review are informed obviously by the findings in the review, but I also want to shout out, I saw that Rochelle is in the room, which is just fantastic. So when I was at Fitzroy High School, I worked very closely with Rochelle Darby and was part of the really amazing work that she was doing to lead the Joining the Dots transition project, run by Rochelle from the Inner Northern Len. And it was a project that was jointly funded by the Inland and the City of Yarra at the time. So hi, Rochelle, lovely to see your name there. And also informed by the Murdoch Children's Research Institute, their child to adult transition study as well. And I'm going to take you through 4 work streams, and the first one is up on the slide there, and these are part of the first phase of our implementation. So One of the first things, and I have to say that none of this also has been approved yet. So this is all work in progress, and we hope to go through the final improvement stage over the next little while, particularly with our updated policy and guidance. So the first work stream there is our updated policy guidance and related key resources. So we're looking to reframe the understanding of transition from being a single point in time event, so for example, all done and dusted by orientation day, to a phased process across the middle years, so preparation years 5 and 6, transfer phase, end of year 6, induction year 7, and consolidation in year 8. And then we're looking to support schools to implement very practical strategies that align with 5 enablers that we've identified as best practice transition. And you can see them there, engagement and wellbeing. So look, we know that students have better outcomes when they're engaged in their learning and development, they attend school regularly, participate in school activities, and supported to have a really strong sense of belonging and connectedness to their school through positive peer and student-teacher relationships. Meeting adolescent learner needs. We know that the transition to secondary school occurs at the same time as the transition from childhood to adolescence. And during this period, students experience profound cognitive, social, and emotional changes that affect how they relate to and experience learning. And we need to respond to those really unique and specific needs. Student voice, agency, and leadership. We know that students feel better supported and more empowered when transition is not done to them, but they can actually participate in transition decision making and can co-design transition programs. It's really, really critically important for students who may be at a higher risk of poor transition. Differentiation, students really need to be at the key or at the centre of transition planning and programs, and programs need to be inclusive of all students and differentiate according to cohort and individual student need. And again, priority needs to be given to vulnerable students who may be identified at risk of a poor transition. And finally, learning continuity. Students' learning is best supported when they're taught at their point of learning need from their first day of secondary school. Now, supplementing the policy and guidance are also some resources. We might move to the next slide, please, Emma, if that's okay. Beautiful. They're just 2 examples there. Again, not quite finalised, but we're just providing to schools on top of the guidance, just some key resources, transition on a page. So we've developed one of these for each of the phases. So there's different audiences, obviously, for each phase. And it just provides a snapshot with a whole lot of very practical strategies against each of the 5 enablers and the outcomes. And a transition practice guide, so much more comprehensive, in-depth guidance with background research, detailed strategies and resources as well. So that's one work stream. The second one, if we move to the next slide.
And Sandra, just giving you, got a couple of minutes.
Thank you. The rest are really quick. So developing a standard transition data set on a digital platform. So as we know, and it's been mentioned before, that data is key to meeting student needs during transition. Unlike the kinder to school transition, there's not a standardised digital way of sharing information between primary and secondary schools. So we're looking at developing a standard data set on a digital platform, and it will provide a mutual benefit of secondary schools being able to get access to very comprehensive student data, but also make it easier for year 6s to be able to provide that very comprehensive data, because it'll be drawing from the department systems. And you can see what we've got there, the different data sets, data points that we're collecting, and just some benefits there as well in terms of what things we're looking at to really start that connection from day one once they join secondary school. The next stream of work is a readiness for secondary school tool we've commissioned. If we go to the next slide, please, Em. We've commissioned Murdoch Children's Research Institute. So they have already identified 5 competencies that can predict a successful or not transition to be used in clinical settings. So we've asked them to translate them to be used in school settings. So this is a tool that may be able to be used by a year 5-6 teacher to identify students who may need some additional support, to also then implement a preventative implementation and improve their chances of having a successful transition. And finally, next slide, is the development of a resource for parents, carers and kin. So this is a resource made up of 2 components. One is developed by the University of Melbourne's Tuning Into Kids, Tuning Into Teens team, who've developed a series of videos and animations looking at how parents can support their child to develop their child's emotional intelligence. And the second component is a series of podcasts by Andrew Fuller, who's looking at helping parents support their children to develop their learning confidence, and both of those resources will sit on the one landing page, and there'll be translations for those as well. So that's me in a nutshell. So thanks very much, Nikki.
Thank you, Sandra. Well done. And it's fantastic to have the resources. I'm sure everyone in the audience will be very excited about that. Look, keep your questions coming, guys. We have got some questions which we'll throw in after our last panelists. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome Sophie Cross. Imagineering is close to my heart. I wrote the funding submission that got us the program after having run it a couple of times, and it's been wonderful to have Sophie on board who will speak to it. So I'll be keeping you to time so that we can make sure that we've got time for questions. But it's wonderful to hear how it all kind of ties together and the importance of the work in primary school. So over to you, Soph.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the introduction, Nikki. Thank you. David, it's great to hear about the program. It's nice to know that things similar to Imagineering are happening elsewhere. And there's other kids who are getting the benefit of a great program. So that's really nice to hear. So Imagineering is a state-funded program. The funding for this program does end in December, which is unfortunate for these kids. But I guess Imagineering is, hopes to inspire. It's inspiring these young kids in grade 5 and 6 in the city of Hume to dream big and to remain engaged at school and stay at school, have some aspirations. And we have 6 modules. The program has 6 modules attached to it. And we are almost to the end of module 5. So we have come a long way over the last 7 months. It has been really intense, but it's been fantastic to see the students, the families, the schools, teachers engaged in the program. So I was appointed the Imagineering project coordinator May last year. So I've only been with the LEN for just over 12 months and pretty much hit the ground running when I started. And it was a monster effort to, I guess, engage the schools initially. That was the challenge, getting schools on board to commit to the program, give us a go, let the students have the opportunity. So we started with transition, just to give them a little bit of a taste of what Imagineering could be. And that was really successful. We had 6 schools. We engaged over 600 students in a very short period of time. And fortunate for us, we were able to keep those schools engaged and transitioned into 2023. So we have 5 schools that have committed to the program, have started from module 1, which I guess similar to what Dave has done with the avatar. We've done lots of work about the careers and jobs. You can see on the screen there's a who they want to be poster. So each student was to create their who do they want to be when they grow up, and design their own poster, and also include. So they had to research some information about the job that they want to do. So that was a really great exercise. And it was interesting to see the jobs that they wanted to do and getting to start thinking about it, starting to lots of fun games to interact them and get them to start thinking about the future and the possibilities that are in front of them. So that was module 1. Module 2 then went on to networking. So we spoke about who are your networks, who can support you when you move into that secondary space and start looking at future pathways, education pathways. So we also had a guest speaker program, which was module 3. We had over 9 speakers, so there was 90 sessions run over a 6-week period, where these guest speakers from nursing, we had paramedics, we had women in trades, which was fantastic because the girls could see that, being a tradie isn't just for men. Girls can do it too. So that was really great to see. We had animal we had animal rescue, we had, which was fantastic. So we were able to get these kids to have some hands-on experience and invite families to come and have a look at their guest speakers. Again, we try to encourage families at any opportunity to come and be a part of the journey with their child. And it's been really, really successful. We had over 47 families come through the guest speaker program across the 5 schools, which was great. So they're starting to have those conversations at home with their child. We created a parent pack that we've put on our website for families to access. And that has all the information about every single module, every single resource, every single flyer that we've used. It has all the content on there for parents to access, teachers to access, community services to access. It's free, it's available, and it has everything in there. And we hope that that encourages the families to, you know, continue when Imagineering finishes, that there is that information accessible to them if they need to. So that was really successful. We then did tours. So module 4 was the tours of La Trobe and Kangan. So again, we had 9 excursions that we did. Again, we had 5 schools do that. We had, there was about 15, depending on the school, we had 15 families attend most on a day, which was fantastic. We organised bus transportation to try and encourage families who may not drive, who might not have access to vehicles, to come and join the tours as well, which was really, really successful as well. So, so we're sort of towards the end, getting towards the end of Module 5. So Module 5 is our presentations and our showcase. So the students have been encouraged to explore everything that we've done from Module 1 right through to the excursions and put it on paper, put it in writing. Let's see what you've learned. Let's see what you remember. Let's see what was your favourite, and have that on for the families to see. And again, we've had showcases and we've had families come along to see the great work that their child has done, and how much they've learnt just in a short space of time. So it is quite humbling when you see and you hear, you know, Dave, you're talking about an incident with, you know, at one of the primary schools, and I had a girl on an excursion who said to me, they got an award at the end, so they got a sticker that says future La Trobe student, and she stuck that on her little booklet and said, I'm going to stick that on my fridge because I'm going to be the first person in my family to go to university. And I just thought, you know, that's, you know, for me that was, you know, enough. I just thought, well, that's what it's about. That's in her head now. She knows the difference. She knows what it looks like. She's been there. She can have that conversation when she goes home, and hopefully she does go to university because she's fantastic. So little things like that you see, you hear when families are saying this is a great program. Thank you for doing this with my child. You know, it makes it all worthwhile, and you see the impact. I know we won't see the impact for another 5 years, but I can see it already. The difference it makes now is fantastic. So so moving forward, I guess we're in transition for term 4. By then we'll have serviced over 700 students engaged in the program. We've got 2 extra schools who want to do transition for term 4. So there's lots of things happening. I've probably blabbered. So please, if you've got any questions, happy to answer any questions that you do have. So but yeah, I guess the other thing we have done as well is run some morning teas with families. So we've done that. We did that in May and June. So that was, again, really successful. And we had over 30 families attend those morning teas. Again, having conversations about what Imagineering is about, the excursions, and encouraging families to come to excursions, to come to the speaker sessions, just be a part of it. So, thanks, which was great.
And right on time as well, which is really good. And look, I want to allow that time for some questions because I think they are so critical. And you know, we've heard from our panelists really now, and some key points for me was, you know, the importance of aspiration, the essential sort of message around the importance of careers in primary school. And, you know, what does that look like? We've heard some really wonderful examples of what that can be. We really hope Mary McMahon will actually join us at our next webinar and be our keynote speaker. But it's wonderful to see, you know, data and evidence-based opportunities are coming, fantastic resources are coming. So I think it bodes well, but there's work to be done. And what we don't want to have is these fantastic programs that run for a period of time, have incredible impact, and then just stop because there's no additional resourcing to continue it. It's about embedding that importance of that practice. And I know Dave and Jane are starting to see some real results of that, embedding it in school curriculum in rural communities. So we've got a few questions, but I just wanted to throw a question to all of our panelists, and we'll take it in turns to answer. And if you can be quite succinct in your answer, which I know is difficult, but we want to try and hear from everyone. How do we ensure that students from all backgrounds, race, socio-economic, etc., have equal opportunities to achieve and aspire? We've heard about the importance of aspiration. Who'd like to? I know Dave's unmuted. Do you want to answer that first, and then Sandra?
Sure. So Nikki, I would say from previously being a teacher and now through the lens of passions and pathways, two obvious things that have noted and proven impact are digging in and understanding every young person's probably projection of who they are, where they see their future opportunities, and not just work opportunities, but really where they see their strengths lying and what you can leverage. I think very much also the important thing is uplifting the understanding of the educators and community around them. And so that's really crucial in the, for instance, with regards to ongoing professional development, and not just the teachers that have those touch points as homeroom teachers or the regular teacher that sees them day to day. That's the crucial bit. Also equity. And obviously this is very much at the core of the new curriculum, and in particular the vocational major as the students head up, is equity of access. And also equity doesn't mean just providing to everybody, it's also understanding the individual needs and then tailoring to each of them. And really I think that's the key, is understanding the young people, educating those around them, and not just, you know, providing a curriculum that's in the hands of the one teacher who's teaching them. And understanding them, and then lastly, to ensure that you know, there is an understanding of what equity probably truly means with regards to doing that uplift of the young people and their journey and transition.
Thanks, Dave. And a lot captured in that answer. Sandra, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, if we think about the 5 enablers of positive transition, there are 2 there that really will play a part, which is, you know, one is student voice, agency and leadership, for students to be, you know, involved and engaged and having a say and being co-partners in that transition, and also the other one around differentiation as well. I think the data set, it will also really assist. You know, there are a couple of questions that we're asking there. You know, one is, what is one unique and special personal trait? What is one special interest or passion? And I think there are some really key questions to really get to know that student from day one when they move into secondary school as well. And I also think the readiness for secondary school tool as well, which will predict students who are most at risk of a poor transition. So, you know, teachers and schools can implement an early intervention to improve their chances of having a positive transition.
And how wonderful, Sandra, to potentially have a standard data set that is based really on the learnings and experiences of experts in the space. I mean, I know you're talking our language, our language, evidence-based practice, et cetera, so we're very excited to see that, and really look forward to following that as it's launched. And, you know, our next webinar might be featuring some of that with Mary McMahon. But Jane, just wanted to direct a question to you as well, especially thinking about Dream Seeds and some of the great work that's taking place. In what ways can early engagement help students avoid internalizing those societal prejudices? And, you know, you can't be what you can't see. Love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, thanks. There's been some great things. Dave and Sandra said some great things there, but I think starting absolutely as early as possible. So I know we're talking about the middle years here, but I'm going to hark back to my earlier years and say that this actually, there's a lot of evidence to say that our children are editing out opportunities and developing really consolidated viewpoints of themselves of what their opportunities are around that 7 to 9 years. So we need to start much earlier. I also really believe very strongly in community partnerships and the community, the whole of community approach to this. Schools do a fabulous job. They can't do it on their own. Parents do a fabulous job. They need to be really very much an integral part of this, as you've talked about too, Sophie and Dave. But I also think, that all of the community together need to take responsibility for every child and young person. So I think that's a critical part. And I will also wanted to mention equity as well, because it really shouldn't matter where your postcode is, where you're born. You should actually have equitable access to supports. There's some wonderful strengths in more isolated areas of rural Victoria, but there's also, we know, unfortunately, the educational disadvantages there. So we need some extra resources in those places. We need resources that are, I believe in a universal approach, but we also need additional resources and support for those children who need it more. That entrenched disadvantage really does need a more wraparound approach to actually get equitable opportunities into the future.
Thank you, Jane. And look, yeah, absolutely. Can never have too much resourcing into it, really. But as you said, there are some communities that need it more than others. And ironically, often they're the ones that are the most disadvantaged. The resources don't land there. So all key advocacy points. Look, we're getting some great questions in the audience, and I just want to make sure we keep us all on time for that 5 p.m. finish. But I particularly wanted to ask a question of Soph. I know you spoke about the parent pack. So just based on what you've learned in Imagineering, what role do family and caregivers play in giving career advice? What have you seen in impacts? Love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, look, I think, I mean, it's something, it's new for them is what I've been finding, is that this is all a new field for them. It's not something that they've ever had to talk about. It's when you speak to some of the kids in the classroom, they've never had this conversation, never had a conversation about who they want to be with their family. Some of them didn't even know what mum and dad did for a job. So that's quite interesting. But as what we're finding is that the families coming to these events that we're holding is having an impact, because now they're starting to think a bit more about it and saying, it was great to be able to come to the excursion because I got to spend that time with my child, which I would never have had the opportunity to do, and have that one-on-one conversation. So it's the impact it's having is enormous, but it's not enough. It's just the tip of the iceberg. It's so broad. But if we can just start making these small changes, hopefully things will change. But yeah, it's just been it's been an eye-opener for me to see just how disadvantaged some of these kids are, and just the lack of knowledge, the lack of information, resources. That's it's been quite insightful. Yeah.
And look, and thanks, Soph. That's a great answer. And I guess, Sandra, the message there is the importance of ensuring that parents feel supported with the right information, and how to have those conversations are critical. And love that we've got a couple of days kids joining us on the webinar. Welcome. Look, we've got
time, Dave, isn't it?
We've got time for just one more question, and it's a beauty really from the audience, because I guess in these days it's around, do these early career conversations put undue pressure on children who are perhaps exploring their own identity? Are we raising or lowering anxiety levels, and would we monitor that? So we probably haven't got time to hear from everyone. Is anyone on the panel want to have a crack at that?
I'm happy to give that a go as a qualified careers practitioner.
Yep. Thank you.
Look, we know that Well, first of all, the idea of career doesn't just mean a job. It means it means all of the roles that you play in your life. It's a very broad concept. And it's around possibility. In the early years, it's around increasing possibility, not making decisions about this is what I'm going to be. We also know that the young people are facing, multiple different job role changes as they face their life. So it's around helping them develop the skills to move from one to another, making sure they're up to date with their skills and their study and those sorts of things. So it's not around deciding I am going to be and sticking to that. So as long as it's always done with keeping doors open, imagining what's possible. I don't believe it adds to anxiety. It actually creates some. In fact, it does the opposite, I think, because it opens the possibility.
Great answer. Thanks, Sandra. And I think you're talking our language. Look, we've got a minute up our sleeve. Does anyone else want to have a crack at that, Dave?
I'll really quickly just say
Yeah,
a safe space, and obviously is really crucial. And thoroughly agree, Sandra, with regards to it very much being that journey of not just a job into a career. It's actually just more possibilities and future, and that can be scary for anybody, no matter what their age. But it's an exciting process to go through if it's in a safe space.
Yeah, great point. And I think that comes back, doesn't it? It ties into that professional development for teachers, that information for parents and caregivers, and just all of us kind of singing the same tune about possibility and aspiration. And my own experience and sort of summing up really is, you don't want your postcode to determine your outcome. And really, we are the ones that limit young people, really. We make decisions for them. And so isn't it wonderful to hear from so many like-minded people, really, where we're creating that possibility of dreaming, which is fantastic, I think. Now, thank you all for being so succinct. We are at 4:57, so there's 3 minutes left in our webinar. I'm very grateful as the facilitator and the timekeeper that we all listened and adhered to my wind-up, so thank you for that. I guess in wrapping up, I do want to really sincerely thank our panelists. Thank you for taking the time to prepare and share your expertise in a very brief format. What will happen, though, for our audience members, if you would like to know more, there will be contact information. We'd really encourage you to scan the QR code because it'll take you to the recording, all of the presentations. A summary will be made of the conversation in the chat because there's been some great sharing of advice and information in the chat, as well as questions. We hope to use some of these questions to inform next steps, advocacy, the importance of resourcing, developing resources within that primary secondary school framework are all really exciting possibilities, and we want to keep that work going forward. We really do. Please help us continue this work. So please do the QR code evaluation. It's only a few questions. We do hope to have another webinar soon with a real focus on that career education possibility. Sandra, we hope we're launching your framework by that stage. And really that, Imagineering will be evaluated, that Passions and Pathways has found some funding and is rolling out across the state, and that Dream Seeds continues to kick the fantastic goals that it's reaching at the moment. Thanks particularly to our audience members. You have been amazing with participating in the chat. I know it's really difficult. I know people are going. That's sort of the formal conclusion of our event. As I said, if you want to know more, scan that QR code, that information will come out to you. And we look forward to having a webinar very soon following up and speaking to you all soon. So we'll let everyone go, including our panelists. You don't need to stay on. You're welcome to stay on.
Thanks, Nikki. Nice to see you. Nice to meet you all. Thank you.
Thank you
so much, guys.
Thanks,
Take care.
everyone. See
See
ya.
you.
Nikki, I've posted a couple of things in
the chat.
But I think they've only gone to us. I don't think they've gone to anyone else. So do you mind?
Yep, no problem. Emma, there's because we've got a Q&A part as well.
Sorry, I couldn't. Yeah.
No, it's okay. Emma will sort that tech out, I promise.
Thanks so much.
I'll make sure they get shared, Jane.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Emma.
Emma.
Bye.
See ya. Thanks so much.
Thank you to all.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Thanks.
All right. That's all.